Adam Howe and Steve Bogman.
Yeah.
There it is. Sorry, I messed it up, and I was just so embarrassed.
Thanks, Nate. Appreciate it.
It's good to see you guys. Thanks for joining us.
I cede my time to Michael Govier.
Yeah. That's the right thing to do.
Yeah, me too, man. Oh man, what a gift. It's truly, that was amazing. And I didn't he submitted to PitchCon, so like I think I want to do this. I want to do a presentation about this. Like I have no idea what it's going to be, and just say it's all you. You got it, and that's.
You did the absolute right
anything I
thing
could
by
have ever
saying,
imagined.
"Look, you have to end out the last 10 minutes here." I mean that was the right thing to do, Nick. So that was
No way. I was
outstanding
like, no,
by Govier.
I cannot. I will.
I mean,
will
Govier
definitely-
has to go take like a 4-hour nap now. Like all that energy is incredible.
Well-
I was sweating watching him do it by himself. I was like, I would get. There's no way I can make it through an hour of rambling by myself.
You know, he even said in his thing, you know,
I would be rambling. His made sense.
Right? It just kept going. It was all made. Yeah, I never got lost. And MLB, he was saying, oh, they're squeezing out every penny, every dollar. I was like, well, I'm going to squeeze out everything of Michael Govier if I can. 10 more minutes. You got this. I believe in you. Unbelievable. We just got another donation as well from Robert. 25. Thank you so much. We're over $5,700 right now. Let's see. Can we get it over 6,000 before the end of this one? We'll see what we can do. Adam Howe, what are we talking about today?
Great. Well, we are the ins and outs of podcasting. We have with me today two very seasoned veterans in the podcasting realm. Nick, you are not going away. I'm going to hold you here. You're going to talk with us today as well. Make you actually do some work here. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I've done no work whatsoever.
Yeah, none at all.
Nope.
I barely see your face.
It's
all right.
great. I just hang out.
Yeah.
I just watch some Michael Govier.
Yeah. So, I mean, the intention of this panel is, in my mind, is to create an hour-long discussion with you guys about in an effort to give anybody listening or watching who is thinking about getting into the podcasting realm or is just starting out, kind of a history lesson in what you guys have went through over the years, and then kind of where you continue to see yourself going in your podcast networks, because you're both running networks at this point. A little bit about myself. I am Adam Howe. I am the current podcast network manager over at PitcherList. You can follow my own podcast. I get the plug-in somehow, right? At On the Wire Pod. We do Fab-related podcasts every Sunday, so keep an eye out for that. We have with us, of course, not Steve, and I made sure to spell that correctly on the show notes so I didn't mess that up. Long-time listener, first-time talker, so it's good to kind of see you in person, Scott. Part of the In the League podcast network now. I see that we talked about this off air. You're getting close to about 2,000 total episodes being put out amongst your fantasy baseball, fantasy basketball, fantasy football, between Chris's Prospect One, your new individual defense podcast, and Dynasty Sports Life. Am I missing any in that list?
We have In This Ring with Joe Pisapia, who does a wrestling podcast as well. I do college fantasy football as well on there. My IDP podcast, which actually isn't new. It ran on Fantrax for 2 years before Gary and I moved it over to In This League. So yeah, lots and lots of podcasting. So this is a good panel for me instead of just one sport.
What are we doing here, Adam? I mean, this is.
Oh, come on, Nick. Come on, Nick. I mean,
we'll kick us both out.
I've just learned everything from you guys. You know, I'm.
Well, you teach us how to be successful then. So I mean,
kidding?
we can all learn from Nick, of course. So,
no.
But yeah, man, lots and lots of podcasting because we added. I've never added it up. You asked me how many shows, and that's not hours. How many shows?
Sure.
And the number was 1,951 on In This League
through
our Spreaker. Obviously, I'm not on every single thing that we have. I'm not on Prospect One with Welsh. I've maybe been on 4 or 5 episodes of that, and that was at the very beginning. I've never been on the wrestling podcast. Dynasty Sports Life is a new one with our guy Jesse Severe, who has been doing a hockey podcast as well. So I'm not on everything, but that also does include all the stuff I do for Line Star and Fantasy Pros, Fantrax in the past as well, among guest spots and all that stuff. So. So many hours of podcasting, and if they were all hours like Govier just had, I would be dead by So I cannot expel that much energy. That guy, I mean, he brings it
Incredible.
every single time. Love watching him.
All right. Well, of course, also we have Nick Pollack, creator of Pitcher List, and he has a few podcasts of his own on the corner, the flagship of the Pitcher List podcast network. Pretty new, Nick Pollack and Friends, Talking Pitching, just to put out one with Lance McCullers. First Pitch, which aired every single day last year during the season. And I'm, and many, many more as time goes on.
There's a new one coming.
There's a new one
for PL Plus people only. It's going to be the Plus Pitch podcast every weekday morning in season.
Is this where you just play the guitar?
Yes.
Is that the one?
That's the one.
I'll have some bass hits in there as well, I'm sure.
No, it's just finally it's a podcast where I can only talk about pitching. I don't even do any hitting, nothing else. Just anything I think about with starting pitching with segments and stuff in the week.
And then, of course, Nick launched the podcast network on Pitcher List beginning of last season at PitchCon, basically. And we have about 20 podcasts on the network going strong. And we'll see a couple new ones come out in the next couple weeks as well. So keep an eye out for that.
Exciting stuff.
All right. So I'm going to pick your guys' brain a little bit about where you started. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because, I mean, Scott, you just kind of talked a lot about what you guys have done, what you're doing and where you've been and whatnot. But I do want to give everybody an idea of kind of like where you guys started and why you guys got into the space and what's kept you kind of going. So, Scott, I'll start with you. Like, over in this league, you guys don't do a ton of print media. You don't do a lot of like written word. You specifically are all, audio. You're all voice podcasts. Welsh puts out his rankings. You guys have your rankings in general, but mostly it's all audio. So tell me, why is that that direction that you guys went? Why podcast? Why not choose a different medium or mix and match?
Right. Well, the whole podcast with the Welsh and I started because what we were basically doing is recording our phone conversations. You know what I mean? Because we would sit on the phone for a long time or whatever, just sit there playing Madden and talk about the same stuff that we're talking about. Obviously wasn't as organized as the podcast is, if you can call our podcast organized. We will definitely go down tangents. Nick knows he's been on there with us a bunch of times going down tangents. And, so we just, that's what we did. We never really were into writing. I feel like I'm good at writing, but I don't like doing it because it takes me forever. I'm like a perfectionist when it comes to that. So I'm like, I don't want to say that this way. I'll say it this way. So if I write one thing, like I do write-ups for the Black Book every single year. And I'm going to start doing some more writing for Fantasy Pros. I actually just did a NFL mock draft that I posted up there last week. So, I'm going to do more writing, but I'm not very refined at it. I can talk all day long with anybody about anything. So that is fine by me, but my writing takes me forever. And if I write one article, I've written that article 4 times at least, because I've redone every paragraph, every line multiple times, trying to get it how I want it to sound. And then at the end of the day, I go, nah, I guess this is good enough. I never feel good about it. So, you don't have the ability to go back and rewind and re-say something you just said. So, the audio format doesn't allow me to do that and be a perfectionist about it. I just have to say my stuff and be okay with it. And if it comes back to bite me, then it comes back to bite me, one of those things. So, that is why we haven't done a lot of writing, and it's just mainly talking for us is what we're better at.
So, Nick, you obviously, from Pitcher List, there's a lot of writing involved there, a lot of audio, soon to be video as well, as you're doing your streams and what have you. So, but you started on the corner, correct me if I'm wrong, about 6 years ago with Alex Fast. And that was your first main podcast. How prepared do you think you and Alex were when you started that, compared to like where you are now? Like, how prepared were you then compared to where you probably should have been?
Oh, man. So the only reason I exist is because Fast showed up, and Fast sent me like some random email in April of 2016, and then we were trying to figure out what exactly, he was helping out with some things, but one day he's like, oh, we should start a podcast. And I've been wanting to do one with someone, but I just didn't really find anyone that like wanted to do it with me, essentially. And he was in Brooklyn with me, which is super helpful. I can't emphasize that enough. I got so lucky to do it in the same room with someone. Anytime you have a conversation like over the phone with someone or in person, it's just different in person. So it allowed us, two people that hadn't really spent that much time together yet, bond a lot better and easier. And in the beginning, our show notes were massive. Every single thing was written down. That is any stat. I never looked on other sites during it. I just had it in front of me inside of my notes. We would spend 1.5 to 2 hours writing just the notes. I joke about this with Fast. In the beginning, anytime he would say something, he wrote the entire paragraph and just read it off. It never actually had, it didn't just come out naturally. He had to write it first.
That's crazy to me because he's so good at answering on the fly questions. Yeah.
He's unbelievably talented. And like over time, I started, at first it was just like, hey, Nick, you answer all this stuff. He's new to the space, everything like that. It's just like, hey, you just give the answers. Which I was fine with because I love talking. So, and then over time, I was like, you're good too, man. Like, you got to get involved with this. And then eventually I said, hey, you got to make these like bullet points and don't write the whole essay. It's not even as genuine when you say it. I can tell that you're reciting something as opposed to just thinking it and telling people about it. And nowadays he's incredible. I mean, he always bothers me. He's like, Nick, you don't do notes. I'm like, yeah, but I just did the list. I got it. Don't worry. I'm fine.
Right.
But he always does the notes and he jokes I don't even see them now. So, I mean, they're different than they used to be in the beginning. But I mean, it's the number one thing it's not the number one. I say a lot of things to people jumping into podcasts, but I really make a point of it. So you're only as good as your notes for the most part, especially like early on because, I've been so it's easy for me doing podcasting now because I'm so just immersed in it that it's just repeating the things I've already done. But especially earlier on, like I had to write new things. And if you're doing anything new, you have to write out every little bit of detail because then you'll feel so much more prepared and then more confident in it. And it'll come out more smooth and all of that fun stuff. But I remember the very first one was like this. I was lucky. He had a Blue Yeti. I didn't have a mic. He had this one. We huddled around it and did a podcast.
Like it was fire in Antarctica.
Pretty much. Exactly right. Yeah. And eventually I bought a second one and I figured out how to create, like there's a virtual mixer you can do if you plug in two things into a USB. And I made that work and we had some problems with it and so on. And just like over time, you just start expanding from there. But, man, I'm happy it started.
Technical problems. I don't believe it.
Always.
Like, that never happens.
All the time. I still go through them.
Technical problems are the worst too, because especially when you're starting, because it's like there's so much and you're not in a rhythm yet. Like Nick just said, the first couple of podcasts we did, I didn't prepare enough notes, right? So I was kind of searching on the fly and I realized I can't do this fast enough to talk about it also. So then I started to make all kinds of notes. Well, then I'm spending way too much time doing the notes, but I'm very ready when we get on. So, you kind of have to find that balance of preparing, and you always over prepare every single show. I over prep for that show for the most part, because it's better to have stuff and not need it than need stuff and not have it. I mean, that's a everyday life thing, but it particularly applies here, because if you're running short, you want your show to be an hour and you can only come up with 45 minutes. That's not great. That's not the formula. That's not going to get it done. So yeah, note-taking, copious note-taking to start 100%.
I remember the podcast I made the most notes for, and Fast will hate me. It's not for any of the Pitcherless ones. It was the first time Spore invited me on to Sleeper in the Bust. It was right after Eno had left and everything, and I was able to do that. And I spent like the entire day writing every single thing I could ever do. I was like, oh my God, this is like such an opportunity. And I remember just like, oh, well, Carlos Carrasco had this on it. I was like, yes, I remember I got this thing, You're only as good as your notes.
That's right.
So, yes, Scott, you talked a lot about the preparation and how the hours that go into. So tell me, how much time does a successful episode take from start to finish, from prep, recording, editing, promoting? Like we even touched on the idea that you actually want people to listen to it, never mind produce the content, and what you've done almost 2,000 episodes. What have you learned that has helped you hopefully become a little bit more efficient over time to kind of cut that down?
Well, routine has obviously helped that a lot. You know, you don't want to be too formulaic, but you do want to have a formula, right? So I know, you know, when we go into our in season is so much easier than preseason, because preseason you're talking about usually you pick a specific subject, or it's a mock draft that like we do at ITL. It's something along those lines. So it's way less rigid. It's more free, but you have to prep a little bit more. In season, you know, we're talking, you know, we do 2 to 3 shows a week. So we know what we're going to talk about on Mondays. We know what we're going to talk about on Thursdays, and it's just hitting the notes. You know what I mean? So it makes it easier, but for a full podcast, you have to prep, you have to record, you have to edit, you have to promote, all that stuff. And I would say everything is at least an hour. Notes are usually 2.5 to 3 on the quick days. Longer than that, they can be 3 to 4, you know, especially if you're watching stuff as it's happening. You know, you just add that all kind of into your workday, right? But I would say one podcast is probably 4 hours of prep time and behind the scenes total. So an hour of recording would probably be 3 other hours of doing other things. So, and that's what, you know, that's why a lot of podcasts don't last very long. People don't understand the amount of work you have to put into it. They think it's showing up, talking, shutting off the mic, and tweeting it. That's not everything. So that's a very small percentage of it. Prep time is more time than anything else for a podcast, in my opinion.
Does that 3 to 4 hour time period, Nick, kind of flow with what you have experienced?
I mean, yes and no. I'm trying to think of this. I know Fast spends at least 30 minutes on the notes beforehand, at least, if not longer. I'm not doing that as much. But I mean, kind of between us, let's just say that's an hour beforehand. The podcast, I would have it for 2 hours, but he always cuts it off like an hour and change. And then after that, there is, I'd say, yeah, there's about 30 to 45 minutes after. So what I have to do is, like, for example, right now we're doing this over StreamYard. And then I take it out of StreamYard. I have to put it into a converter so I can get it into a WAV file, so then I can stick it into the Great Levelator, which is then going to level out both our audio. Then I have to put it into Audacity. And by the way, downloading it from StreamYard is like 5 minutes, and so it's annoying how long it takes.
I know. And the audio is always longer than the video file too, for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's weird. And I will say, I recommend to everybody, you know, there are a lot of new methods, especially considering how 2020 made us all more digital. A lot more businesses are coming up that are offering these solutions for podcasting and video conferencing, all that kind of stuff. That, yeah, explore the options out there. You know, it's really if you are a good Googler, like, you will find a lot of these businesses, and if you do some research, you can actually like get some quality tech to help these things easier for you, make these things easier for you. I'll talk about that with hosting later on too.
I mean, did you ever have to record stuff on Skype, Nick? When you first
back
started?
in the day, that's what we started with, MP3 to Skype recorder, or Skype to MP3 recorder.
And it wouldn't work all the time either. Like that was.
Let me tell you.
Yeah. That was a big
the
thing.
Zach Gallen interview is going to haunt me forever. I drove Spore crazy once. We were doing one. I think we recorded it twice without it going. And we did it the third time, and it was just the most like irate one, where we weren't angry at each other. We were just like, let's get through this. Like, you know, oh man, I was so mortified by that. But right, so after this, so I got the Great Levelator. I stick it into Audacity, which is actually pretty quick. Then I used to, in the beginning, I used to listen to the whole thing and get rid of any ums or whatever. And like, you know, any empty space and stuff. I don't do that anymore. I guess it's just
when we first started, I did drops on every show, not just mock drafts.
Oh man!
So I would listen back, get rid of all of the ums and all that stuff, the weird silences, and then drop in stuff too. Obviously, there's just not enough time in the day for that, so I stick with just the mock drafts for those drops now. So
I cheat on mine. I use a program called Descript that Nick actually recommended, and it transcribes the entire podcast, and then it actually will go out and find the ums and the uhs or whatever. I do Control F and just hit delete all. And it's pretty. It ends up sounding pretty good. I mean, there's a couple cuts here or there that you can tell pretty hard.
5% rate. There's sometimes it speeds too quick. Mm-hmm. But that's worth it, I would imagine. But so after I do that, I then apply a chain, an audio chain to enhance the audio. And it's, oh man, I mean, it sounds like, oh, Nick, like you don't really need to do that. No, let me tell you, it
makes
is
a
a world of
difference.
difference.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And all I do is actually really simple. The reason I still use Audacity is because I can save it as a chain and just kind of do it once. I don't need to redo all the normalization and compression and the treble boost and bass boost or whatever you want to do on it. And then normalize again. And a limiter, I think I do at the top. But there's a YouTube video. Anyone who wants to ask on Twitter or whatever, I'll send you the YouTube video. But it just says, yeah, these are the things you do on Audacity, and that's it. And it's like a really quick addition. I do it every single podcast. It just makes it sound way better. Sometimes there's extra noise going on that we didn't get before, so there's always like an extra space in the beginning. You just do noise removal, and that's that. The other addition right now is I have this lovely notepad that is just next to me on every single podcast. I'm just writing down if there's any moment I will need to edit. If
I have
catch it
Notepad
here,
pulled up on my computer always.
there you go.
Yeah, and I do the same bit. Anytime there's a blip or something I need to go back and fix, I mark the time, and you have
Right.
to work backwards on those because
That's
if
the
you
most
cut
annoying part. I've done this so
if
many
you cut
times.
the
of going from
first
the front,
one,
and I'm like,
if you cut the first one, you're screwing up the times you've marked for the other one, so you have to work backwards on that.
oh,
Yes,
that's
yeah.
annoying.
Yeah,
But,
that was a learning curve in the very beginning.
So annoying.
yeah.
Right, so there's that, and then there's, of course, now we have ads on the network, so there needs to be like, when is the ad break and stuff, and be able to not make it like this massive gap of airtime. But outside of that, then I do that, and then I just stick in the theme at the beginning and the end. Always something I recommend heavily when it comes to themes and stuff is make a massive fade out for your theme, and then start right after, like, I mean, for us, there's the final hit. But actually, in the production, it lasts for like 15 seconds of a fade out.
Yeah,
and it makes it so much smoother when you first come in. And like sometimes I hear it and it just kind of disappears, and then the person talks, and it's like really awkward.
Right. Yeah,
Make a
that's what
large
we do
fade
too. We take, because I have to do this when I submit our show for Sports Grid every single week. We do 5 different segments. So you take the volume and lower the volume and fade it in, so you're talking over as the music is going lower, not just this awesome intro. Hey guys, welcome to our show. It sounds weird if you do it like that. So
Absolutely.
you can have the best entrance ever, but it sounds weird when it stops completely and then you start talking. So
then after that, got to upload it to Omni Studio, and then we got to put in an ad drop. So I have to find the place where it's in, put that in, and then copy essentially the stuff from the last time, just change the names. But then it's all set, and that normally takes about 45 minutes to an hour, that whole process.
Right.
Something like that. So yeah, I'd say it's like, with everything, it's 3 hours, including the audio.
And having 2 people, for me, I usually do the notes and the Welsh does the editing.
Right.
So
yeah, exactly.
that's how we split up the workload. So it's not, 4 hours for one person. It's usually 2 hours for me and then 2 hours for him.
So it's great. You guys are talking about a 3 to 4 hour process per episode. And of course, that's not the true for everybody, as Justin Mason is pointing out in the chat. If he has an hour-long episode, the whole thing might take him an hour and 15 minutes total. So good on you, Justin. He obviously has found his efficiencies.
Well, Justin and Nick and Spore, all these guys write. I don't write. So that's when I do my note taking in the process for the podcast. So if I was already writing, I probably wouldn't take the copious notes that I do because I had already done it. Like Nick just said, well, I've already made the list, so I don't need to make the notes because I just made the list. I know what I just did it. So, I don't make, when we do our ranks episodes for our Hell Week, I don't make notes for those. I'll put in like the Fantasy Pros ECR, then FBC ADPs and stuff like that, which can be a little painstaking.
And the pitcher list rankings,
yeah, of course, in the pitcher list rankings, of course, I said that. So, but yeah, I mean, I'll put in all the rankings just to see where we are, where the Welsh and I are against everybody else, to see if there's a wacky ranking or we're way too high or way too low on somebody, that kind of stuff.
So in conjunction with everything you do prep, there's obviously going to be things that you guys talk about. Scott, you alluded to this earlier, that you didn't prep for. It just ends up being a conversation. You go down tangents, you go down rabbit holes. So how do you kind of account for that? Because in my opinion, a good podcast is going to have those. Like, it's going to have
Oh,
an
yeah.
actual conversation between the host and or guests that are on the podcast. So you really get to kind of get a feel for who you're listening to and kind of what they think outside of the main subject matter. But how do you make sure that those things don't take over the main reason you're creating the podcast in general?
I mean, we kind of don't. I mean, that's kind of how, I don't know if you guys knew this, but in this league, pods are 45 minutes a piece. If we're just talking about the sport, that's why every show is an hour and a half long, because we do go down side tangents. And we really, in the beginning, we tried to curb that. But I think, we were getting a lot of interaction on the tangents and things that we were talking about also. So we just kind of left that in. And I think that's what people do like about the Welsh and I in a podcast, is that, like Nick said, it's better when you can get in the same room with a person. And we've been in the same room for a couple podcasts, but most of our podcasts are me at my place, him at his place. But we've known each other for 27 years or something, 26 years, 25 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. So we've spent so much time together that it's a natural feel. There's no clunkiness, because this is the same way I would talk to him if we were in the room together, because we've known each other so long. So we just kind of leave that stuff in. And if I will have to rein him in sometimes, and he will have to rein me in sometimes, because we want to keep talking about whatever it is. And, half the time, and people will roll their eyes at us when we're on the baseball pod, it's, me talking about the Diamondbacks and how miserable I am and eating Carl's Jr. about it. You know what I mean? Or on the football show, the Welsh will talk about the Niners too much. I'll talk about the Steelers too much. So you'll get a little bit of that homerism from us, but I think that's pretty real. I think most people would do that if you're in a normal conversation, whatever team you're a fan of, you would talk about it a little bit more. So I think that's what people like about our stuff, is because we're friends and we smack talk each other like friends do when you're sitting at a bar. So that's our whole feel.
Nick, like you said, you didn't start the podcast until Alex came along and kind of pushed you to do it, even though you wanted to do it. You just couldn't find the right person to do it with. How long do you think it took you guys to actually get your voice? How many episodes in, or how long were you guys recording for until you feel like OTC or On the Corner actually got its voice that we hear today?
I think about 5 more episodes and you guys will have
it. There it is, right? Yeah. We're not there yet. I remember actually earlier on, there was one night he couldn't come over to my place, so I went over to his, and I think I had whiskey with him. And I think it was
you guys got into them whiskey secrets.
Yeah, I think the first episode, distinctly, I just remember myself being so awkward about it and trying to be something that I'm not. And a lot of this is it's nerve wracking, It's like, oh my God, I'm putting myself out there in a way that's different than writing, because writing I can curate it, I can change it. Even though you guys know I'm very loose in my writing, with how many typos are in there, it's still, I still think, no, I shouldn't say that, I should say this or whatever. And in a podcast, it's just kind of like, all right, so that's there, unless I actually go out and edit it later, which I just don't have time for, then, that's it. So, I think there are certainly different marks with it. I think by the time Fast became the analyst that he is, he wasn't that right away. That's when I think we have the best version of it now, is because anytime I say something, it's not just, okay, yeah, great, thanks, Nick. It's okay, wait, hold on a sec. It actually becomes this true conversation back and forth about this stuff, which is, I think, way better for everybody. But yeah, early on, there was that time I went over and I started being loose up. I was like, you know what, this is much more fun, and this dude is amazing. And now I'm starting, it's a lot looser and just more, yeah. And then embracing the tangents, always embrace the tangents. My God, it's I think the most important thing is just passion. You give energy, you get energy. Right. And if you're not giving energy, no one's going to be energetic for you, and if you are doing a tangent, that means that you care about the thing, and then you show it. And then it's really exciting. And everyone's like, okay, I didn't care about this thing about why pears are the worst fruit, but yeah, pears are the worst fruit, and that's the best. That's the beauty of a good podcast and a good entertainer, because that's ultimately what you're doing. You're just being entertaining.
You actually not like pears. You gotta like pears though, right?
Is that just a bit, or
yeah?
I literally just had nothing to think of, so I just thought of a pear, because I don't know. It's an obtuse shape. It's kind of like, where's the first bite of a pear? Is that at the bottom? Is it like on the
It's
out
the
of
big
it,
part.
you know?
No, it's
Out
yeah,
of
it's the
the
bottom.
can for me. I mean, I
Out
don't
of
know
the
what you guys are talking about, but yeah.
You know, I could see someone just be like, no, right at the top. Give me the pear right at the top. You know, like it just seems.
Stem and all.
You know, but an apple is just, oh yeah, that's exactly like there it is, just waiting for you. It's like pushing out, like, yeah, that's the part right there. It's like, okay, thank you, Apple. You're great.
Sorry, my other co-host is here.
No,
by
this
the
is
way.
this is the perfect segue, Scott. We
That's the
got a
captain.
guest on your on the stream, and so I wanted to talk to you guys about having guests on your podcast, and like we're talking about the voice of the podcast and how that kind of grows over time. Scott, you and Chris, like you said, are just having a conversation on the phone, and then now you decided to record it. But when you have guests on the show, like how does that change? And I'm going to start with Scott because Nick, you don't do guests
No.
on the corner. Only your interview shows, which is literally all the point of the episode, is to have a guest on. But Scott, how does your show change, or does it not? Do you kind of force your guests to change to kind of match you guys, or are you guys mentally preparing based on the guests that you're having on the show?
I think most people that come on are matched with us. You know, I think if they're not, we bully them into it. Like that's why Nick ended up playing the guitar on our show, right? Because we're
I
both
was
like,
so down for
come
that. I'm good at
on,
guitar.
come on, just do it. You know, even if he wasn't down, we would have bullied him into it. But no, I think it depends on the person on the podcast, of course. You know, getting Nick on is a treat every time. Getting Spore on is a treat every time. It's fun to talk baseball with these guys, you know, because these guys are just as passionate as you are about it, if not more so. So, you know, it's always a treat. But I do think that when you go on a show, I want to match what they're doing on the show. When I'm a guest on someone's podcast, I want to match with what they're doing, what they're bringing. I think I expect the same when they come on to my show, kind of to match the weirdness that we have occasionally. So if we go down a tangent, you're coming right with us. We're going to get your opinion on it, whether you want to give it or not. That's just kind of what it is. I mean, we're not asking you who you voted for. You know what I mean? We're talking about pairs. So, you know, it's stuff like that. So it's fun, and just keep it lighthearted and have a good time. And, you know, that's what we like, player debates too. We like to put people on the spot. That's fun. So come on. Tell me who you like. Who do you like better though?
Oh,
You know,
Welsh is so good at that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he does. The Welsh does. I mean, I can't tell you the scenarios on any form, not even on my show, Nick. So don't worry. I'm not going to go off on anything crazy here. But he will give me like, you got to do one of these three things or you die. And they're all horrible things. Which is the one you do? And I say, well, I don't do any of them. And he's like, no, but you have to do one of them. I'm like, no, I don't have to do any of these in your made up scenario. And we'll go back and forth on that. But yes, he's very, very good at getting the best out of people for sure.
Nick, what about your interview shows like Nick Pollack and Friends and what have you? Like how is your preparation for that type of a show, an interview show, different than on the corner where you know who you're going to talk to? You've been talking with Alex every week for 300 episodes now. How do you prep differently for that?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I've invited people on and they're like, hey, so what's the outline? I'm like, there is no outline. That's just a live show. That's just me. I just want to hang out and talk to you about you. You know, I enjoy people. Shocking, more at 11. But I think our stories are really interesting because no one has the same one as someone else. And there's a reason why I know you right now, and there's all this extra stuff that I don't know about you. And I kind of want to hear, your craft. Everyone has a thing that is them. This is the thing that they do, right? And for a lot of people, it's more than just that one thing. And so many people have so many passions about stuff, and I want to hear that come out. And I think that's a really special thing. So I don't do any research about it. I mean, obviously, a lot of people I brought on that I know well. I mean, it's Nick Pollack and Friends, not Nick Pollack and Strangers. Even though it should kind of be Nick Pollack and Strangers, I would dig that too. But
we're gonna change the name of it to Nick Pollack and People I Want to Be Friends With.
We have an opening in the network. We have an opening in the network. We'll make it. We'll create a new podcast. There you go.
I mean, let's just give a nightmare for Fast and make it Alex Fast and Strangers. There's nothing he'd rather want.
And don't tell him who's going to be ahead of time.
Anything else but that podcast is what I'm trying to say. But no, what I do have a notepad that is just generic like questions to ask people. In case there maybe was one or two times when I'm like, oh God, I don't know what to ask next. There are no threads. There are no areas that, for whatever reason, my brain just shuts down. And I know as a good host, what you're supposed to do is every time they're talking, you should know you have a backup plan of the next thing you're going to say if there isn't something from this that you're going to say next, right? Like, you just always have to know what the next thing is. And there have been times when I
You get
didn't
one
have
word
something,
answers.
my brain is scrambling and like trying to find something, and I realized, Nick, just always have this notepad open. Just always, there's some basic questions about whatever is there. And I found myself always asking, like, what is your mantra, that kind of stuff, because I find that's very interesting and speaks to the, the personality inside and everything. But yeah, so I mean, I have it lucky in that way. I think a lot of other people, like when I've been on guests on shows, they give me these amazing outlines. They do research on me sometimes and everything. And I'm like, I am the most touched ever when they actually spend time like looking into, what I do and stuff. There certainly have been times when they say, great, cool. Yeah, we want to bring you on. We're going to talk about first baseman this episode. And I go, I can do that. I can assure, that's fine. Even though, like I'm going to be bad at this. But okay, like I'll figure that out,
I'm never sure. Like with you, are you more insulted when people won't ask you any hitters at all, or relieved?
Oh,
like
I'm so relieved.
Okay,
I don't want
relieved.
to talk about hitters. Why would I want to do that?
I don't know. I just
yeah, exactly.
because it's part of baseball. Maybe you'd want to talk.
No,
about it.
I mean, no. There's nothing more enjoyable than talking about something you think you know about. I said think,
yes,
not that you know about, that you think you know about. So when they're like, "Hey, I want to hear what you think about this thing that you think you know about," I'm like, "Oh yeah, great." But yeah, let's talk about Bobby Dahlbeck. I'm like, what?
I don't know.
Why? Why do you want to hear me talk about it?
Yeah,
I will say that's the advice I would give as somebody who just started podcasting just over a year ago. One thing that I know I do hopefully fairly well is we have a guest on The Wire every single week. It's somebody new. I think we've had a new guest on except for like 2 times. I'm including one random episode that Nick and I just did.
That was the best. I had so much fun with that episode.
That was by far the least prepared I ever was for an episode in the 45 or so episodes we've done. So I appreciate
like 75 minutes or whatever.
It was great. Easy. It was awesome. But we typically will prepare the episode around who the guest is going to be to an extent. Like we have a very strict theme of what we do. We talk about fab and fab options every Sunday, but we always touch on some kind of strategy aspect of the game. And typically that theme or that strategy will revolve around the expertise of the guest that we're going to have on. And so I'm one of those hosts that will do at least a little bit of research to find out who it is. And I would also recommend, and it's just because of what I do, I give an intro to who my guest is on the show rather than kind of putting them on the spot and talking about themselves. They're going to talk enough because I'm going to make sure they're going to talk plenty on my show. I do want to make sure that I'm letting everybody listening know who they are, where they come from, and honestly why they're going to, why they should care that they've come onto the show that they're listening to. So I would recommend that as well. It doesn't work for everybody. Sure. Not every one strategy for a podcast is going to work for everybody. But if you are going to have almost complete strangers on your podcast, it's good to know who they are and what they're good at talking about.
Yeah, and a lot of that is just getting, I know you like to have new people on. We like to have a lot of the same people on, which, can be a rut or whatever. But I mean, I feel like we keep having a lot of the same people on because we like what they do. You know what I mean? They bring a lot to it, and the chemistry fits with us.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like Spore can just drop in and give us a hard time. I think one of the first shows I ever did with Mason, I saw him in a bathing suit. That was very interesting and still haunts me. So, it's people that can drop in and really match with us, I think works too. So, and a lot of that is when you first start is feeling it out, because sometimes it's just not going to work, man. Some people just don't jive with your energy or whatever, and it's just not going to work. I feel like that's one thing that I decently bring is I feel like I can match with whoever. If it's low energy, I can do low energy. If it's high energy, I can do high energy too. I don't know if I could do Govier energy, but I've done plenty of shows with Govier. He's had me on his show many times. So, I think I can at least match a little bit with him, but I don't know that I could match all the way. I couldn't run the marathon. I could do the sprint with Govier. That's for sure. So
we're talking about like what you guys talk about and how you guys talk about it, but let's talk about how it comes out after the fact. The actual quality of production, the sound quality. Nick, you talked about, I went back, of course, and we had a very similar panel last year. You weren't on the panel, Scott, you were at PitchCon, but you came in at the end and you really kind of gave a quick synopsis of like some
I couldn't help
some
myself,
good things.
Adam.
Yeah. gotta put your 2 cents in there. But tell me about like, why is it important? And besides that, like, what do you do besides all the stuff you kind of talked about earlier on about, the leveler and what have you? What equipment are you using, or what do you recommend to give, that extra,
Sure.
sound quality?
There's so much I could say about this, and really, if you have any questions about the process and everything, just reach out to me on Discord. If you guys have PO Plus and stuff, that's the
Welsh
easiest way
and
to
Nick
talk to me.
will talk about microphones for
so,
at least
for
20
example,
minutes
if you guys
before
can
we
see
start.
here, PitchCon, I have 2 RE20s back here because I just couldn't help myself and I wanted Fast and Me to have them. And then everybody had an SM7B. I was like, well, I need to have one of those too. So then that's what I'm using for this here. I have 2 Yetis as well that we used to use Fast and Me before the RE20s. But you don't need any of that. I mean, what you have is a Q2U, Adam, and that's what I recommend everybody. That's like a $50 mic. Comes with a stand, I think, too. Everything you need to get going with it. It's a great sounding mic. It works. But it's not.
That's
just
the key right there. It works.
It works. No, but I mean, I've heard bad mics. Someone pay like $30, $40 for a mic. Total difference at the Q2U. Right. I mean, it's a huge. That's to me the first entry level one. And it makes a huge difference, but it's not just the mic. It's also the room. I when I was making this thing, I moved everything out of it and stood in it and talked, and it was the worst echo ever. But I put in a shag rug here. I put on these panels. I have a blanket across the windows and stuff. You have to curate the room a bit to prevent sound. And if you don't have that, which I understand if you don't, do things. I've seen stupid things like if you're doing a podcast, wear a blanket over you. Like that's all you need to do. I mean, who cares?
I've heard people that'll do them in their closet. Like they'll get in the closet to do them because
it's all audio.
The sound is better.
This is all they have. Is
right.
And that goes into how you talk into it. Embellish. Go over the top. If you look at voice actors do their, do animation or whatever, right? They are so ridiculous inside of the booth. But you don't feel that way when you're watching the show. It feels so natural, and you have to embellish, not your opinions, just your energy and how you inflect and your cadence and everything. Make it change, make it interesting, make it dynamic. All that stuff makes a huge
monotone
huge
will get flipped off pretty quickly.
Oh God! So that's the thing is your sound is everything because that's all they have. And you have to make sure you're doing it at a level that is okay. And not to mention all the stuff I said about Audacity, that will make your sound quality go way up. Doing nothing. Like, literally, that doesn't cost a dime. It just costs 5 minutes of your time. And that rhymes. So that's totally true.
Oh, man.
So, I mean, there's a lot more things I can go into about this. But that's like the entry of just nail that down. Make sure that you're doing those things right. And then instantly, hit the ground running at the beginning of the podcast. Adam, we've talked about this. We do like 5 to 10 second intros. Don't do 30-second ones. And when you do, I encourage everybody to try not to ask like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Just like, no. If this is the first time someone's listened to your podcast, go into it. All right, cool. We're going to talk about second baseman this year. You should be drafting. All right, I'm here with Steve. Steve, who is your number one guy for a second base? Like instantly, good. Okay, we're getting to it. And now you can sell them on your podcast without, because our attention spans are terrible. No one's going to just invest 5 minutes into your podcast because whatever. You gotta win them over really quickly in that first minute.
I think we've cleared this up. His name is Scott, Nick. It's Scott.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve.
Don't think I didn't catch that. Yeah. So I caught it. Don't worry. It'll come back around. We'll get him. So
now, Scott, I know you have radio background, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, you are. Good. Welsh has the radio background. Yes. Yeah.
But so I'm assuming that you guys have had 2,000 episodes worth of time to like kind of bring up your equipment, bring up your post-production. Are you using anything in particular kind of right now that maybe that you were still using a long time ago that you just felt like has lasted the test of time, or are you constantly upgrading?
I'll upgrade occasionally, but right now I'm using, I don't even know what mic this is that I have, and then I have this Behringer board. That's
Oh,
my
look at that.
my
Yeah.
setup. And basically I do what Welsh tells me when it comes to that stuff because he has worked in radio, right? So I'm not, Spore said that those geeks are so horny for mics over there. That's true. Nick and Welsh definitely are. But I tell you what though, I was and still am probably I'm what you are marketing to when you make a podcast. I'm the person, that you're marketing to. I listen to so much podcasting every single day, and I would hear the bad ones and go, well, look, this might have the best information in the world, but I'm turning it off because I can't stand that hum, that hiss, that whatever in the background. I can't take it. Internet issues too. Every podcast is going to have an internet issue at some point. So if it garbles for a couple seconds and then we get past it, fine. But if it's longer than a minute or two, you either have to re-record that or you have to get rid of that spot. You can't leave it in. So it's too long. If there's just a little weirdness in it, fine. It's understandable. I do podcasts, so I know how that can happen. You don't want to redo the whole thing because of that. But, if it's longer than that, you're going to have to use it. And like Nick said, sometimes you don't feel like you have the energy that day, but you fake it till you make it if you don't have the energy. I feel like those days are rare. Because most of the time you want to talk about stuff, but sometimes something else happened in your life. You're tired. You didn't get to see what you thought you would be able to the night before. You didn't have time because something else happened. So sometimes you kind of have to wing it in that scenario. I'm not talking about analysis, of course. I'm talking about energy. But, I think you're like a Yeti. While I know that, Nick might roll his eyes at a Yeti. I think that is like your Wade Miley of microphones. That is like your bottom line, what you want starting for you. Anything lower than that,
the floor.
It's probably not going to be much better.
Make sure you do them right though.
Oh, you have to
study
get the
with your
clown nose.
mic. If you have a Yeti, you're talking in to the blue side and right here. I don't want to see any more tilted where you're talking into the top of a Yeti. That's not where it is.
Well,
sure
it is if you
isn't
that where it is if you
that
aim
looks like
if
an
you,
upside down heart. Okay.
Yeah, the Pac-Man. Right.
That's
the
Pac-Man one. That's the one. Test your mic. Seriously, guys, just like talk into it and see, is it better like this? Is it better like this? Is it better like this? Look, I sound so much better right now because I'm talking right into it as opposed to out here where it's just harder to hear. That makes all the difference.
Yes. Yeah.
Experiment.
Mic position. I do the Mike Greenberg. I get like right up into it.
Oh, I love doing that.
I get right up into it. And Welsh is like, move it away from you a little bit. I'm like, but I want it up here. Yeah. Try my sweaty balls.
All right. Well, now that you finally put together a quality sounding podcast, how are you guys getting it out there? Especially at the beginning, of course. This is targeted at somebody who's just kind of starting out. Nick, what have you found is the best way to have promoted? You have obviously the whole website to kind of back you up with this and in getting readers to turn into listeners. But like promoting the show, promoting yourself and the brand itself, the Pitcherless brand or the On the Corner brand.
Get them to talk about it on ESPN, I think is the number one answer.
Right? Jesus. Oh my God.
Goals.
No, I mean, I think that's the hardest part for any of these. It's so difficult. We were lucky. Like, I remember even doing it. I already felt I was late to the podcasting party. I mean, yeah, Bogman, you've been doing it for 6 years by then? Yeah. CBS Today had been killing it with a Sleeper in the Bus. They just 1,000 episodes. We did 300. So many people have been involved in it already. But we had the benefit. I mean, we had the brand outside of the podcast already for 2 years. And for me personally, using Reddit, our early episodes were all on Reddit. And I remember the first episode we put out, which is so abnormal, I believe. The first episode, it was on SoundCloud, which is not IAB certified. So
that's how we started too, was with SoundCloud.
Yeah, it was free. Essentially, it was like $150 for the entire year.
All of us and every local rapper on SoundCloud. That's right.
Yeah, I think Fantasy Pros was on it for ages too.
Yeah.
But we used that because it was that. I don't know how verified these lessons are, but the first episode we got was 1,200, and that was absurdly high to me. Like, I mean, that is high, and it was just I couldn't believe that we had that many people in the first week, or so. And that, from SoundCloud eventually, but then wasn't verified views. And there's this whole thing that happened around like 2019 or 2018 where they like cracked down on like bad listens or something like that. I don't know. So then we moved to Blueberry for a moment. That had like a WordPress built-in thing. And then after that, we went to Simplecast. And then after that, now we're in Omni Studio, which to me is like the greatest podcast platform in the world. I cannot. I mean, I feel so lucky we get to do this. But I've been searching for podcast hosting services for ages. They always have a drawback of some kind of how much you can upload, how long does it last, bandwidth per listens per month, all this stuff, and it's just frustrating. We got lucky with ours because it's essentially like, once we hit. I mean, we have to pay for as many listens as we get over a certain threshold, but we can have as many shows as we want. And we don't have to pay for added shows, and all the customization and the analytics of it is bar none better than any other one. I saw Megaphone, for example. I took the tour of that thing and I was like, nah, man, I just got off the phone with Omni and like, there's no way I'm doing that one. But I haven't tried Spreaker. I know that's what you guys are using, Bogman.
Yeah.
We
Anchor
use as well is another one I haven't touched.
Yeah, we use Spreaker. The nice thing about Spreaker is, just the uploading. So I don't have to go to a separate thing and do a separate email for uploading, which is what we had to do with SoundCloud. SoundCloud, it was, one email per account, I think, to make it free or whatever.
Right.
So, it was like, okay, what was the damn email for the basketball
so
show
many
again?
Gmails.
Yeah. How many fake Gmails can we make here? So it's great. And, you can drop in your ads whenever you want to on Spreaker. It makes everything much, much easier. Welsh obviously sets a lot of that stuff up for us, but I upload all of my own shows. So the college football and the IDP and all that good stuff. So it makes everything easier, and I can get to everything in one spot, which is nice too.
And
so that leads.
the other half of this really quickly is just Twitter. It was everything. Something I want to do more of. That it's huge, especially in the fantasy baseball world. Like just getting yourself out there, interacting with others, inviting other people on and being involved in it. The hardest thing I think Adam, we've talked about this. Being a guest on another show is more important than bringing guests to your show. However, bringing guests to your show is networking in the sense of, hey, I get to learn you, and then you get to kind of say like, hey, hopefully they will keep me in mind then when bring it onto their show. Kind of, it's a hard thing to do because you want to be available to everybody, but you can't necessarily always be the person. So like, hey, everybody invite me, please. It's $50 an episode or $100.
Who was it the other day that was saying how they charge to be on?
But yeah, that's an important part of it too, is networking side of it and getting invited onto other stuff. And those little videos, those take time, but those do help, in my opinion. Of just, hey, people are going to listen to that. It's on Twitter. Like, here's something that looks interesting. Like, I'll give this a quick listen to hear it. I'm too lazy to make them for On the Corner anymore or all the other stuff, but it's something that we certainly want to do in the future.
We haven't really cracked YouTube either, and I know that YouTube is just becoming
that's something we're moving
unstoppable.
into this year is more live recordings as well.
So for those who are kind of just starting out, and I'm going to jump ahead because I do want to get to one other question before time is up. But Scott, you kind of alluded to it just a little while ago about dropping in your ads. So how important is it, especially to somebody who doesn't have a whole network or a website behind it, to kind of prioritize putting ads in or creating other ways in order to, create monetary value for your content, whether it's through like you guys do with your Patreon, creating bonus content like your secret shows, or as Nick alluded to, that PL Plus podcast that's coming out soon. How important is that in conjunction with what you guys do on a regular basis?
It's enormous, because with Patreon and the ads we do and all that stuff, I was able to quit my 9 to 5, and focus on this. So, that is it feeds us, and I feel like it makes us better too, because I'm able to work on all the behind the scenes stuff and not cram it into, 3 hours at the end of the night and then get 2 hours of sleep and then go back to my regular job, and then have this job. So, I feel like it makes everything better. And that's, If there's content out there that you like, you got to support it, and you can support it in many different ways. It doesn't have to be Patreon. Just giving listens and listening through the ads helps. Buying the products that they advertise, especially with live ads, also helps, and using the codes that whatever podcast provides too. I mean, I know everyone has a HelloFresh code, right? I mean, I feel like that everyone's had a DraftKings code at one point, but that stuff helps. It brings in money, and it keeps the wheels turning on all the content that everyone loves to listen to. So whenever I get a chance, if there's a promo code I can use, I pick a podcast and I use that promo code. That's for sure.
And then Nick, I mean, when we launched the podcast network a year ago, we didn't do any ads on any of the podcasts. And if you listen to any of the podcasts recently in the last couple months, you'll notice that, there's been an ad or two plugged in there. So with the mix of opportunity for Pitcherless, if you don't have PL Plus and you're using the ad website, plus the PL Plus Discord ad-free website, there's a lot of different ways in which you can kind of make up the ground for the costs that it takes to put on everything. So when did you kind of make that decision to like, all right, we need to put in, the ads into these shows in conjunction?
Sure. Let's just say PL Plus one more time, by the way. No, that's actually, it's one of those things that we would have done it a while ago if we found a good system or a good consistent ad sponsor. The things that I've stood for over the years, though, is I will not do any affiliate stuff. And I also won't do ads just for the sake of ads if it's not really any significant bump to things. So, for example, when we were starting off, like we could have done some like dynamic ads of like the local station or something like that. But we would have made a total of maybe like, a $30 or $20 a month doing that. And to me, it would just make the podcast worse. And I was in a position to believe more in the longevity of the podcast, not doing that stuff and holding out for, for the current sponsors that we have now, which is honestly still not easy to do, to find them. We're hoping to be working with someone, a podcast sales manager right now for the future, but we're using Gumball Media, and that's the biggest success we had that anyone can apply to, and I highly recommend that you do. Because they've found us sponsors. I mean, what are we? Athletic Greens, and there's Trade Coffee coming. We had one. What was it? It was My Bookie or whatever. So we're lucky to have those. It's still hard to do that. And that's, I would say, the biggest barrier for it is just normally it's like you need to get 10,000 listens a week on an episode to do that. And for ages, I mean that it's only because we have a full network that we're able to really do that, right? To easily get past that barrier. So it's a really tough world in that way. If you are a salesman, though, if you have like the ability to just get on the phone with all of these companies and just cold call a lot, you will find people that don't care about that 10,000 listens an episode barrier. They'll just be like, okay, fine, yeah, whatever, we'll sponsor you for like $200 a month or something, based on your listenership, and that's good. That will help, and then you can invest in. Okay, great. I can make my sound quality better. Or maybe I can get someone to help make those little videos for me on Twitter or whatever it is. Maybe improve my hosting. All those little things help so much. So I definitely, if you have that ability, take advantage of that and do that. I just didn't have the time to go off and seek it. And instead, pushed into the site. I mean, that's one of the benefits that we have a ton is it's not just the podcast. It's all these other things that help funnel it in.
All right, I want to end this with the last question that's on that outline. Hopefully, you guys had a chance to look that over and think about.
I saw it. Yeah.
With the coming to 2,000 episodes, guys. I'll start with you. Everybody's heard the horror stories, and I think Paul Sporer mentioned it earlier in the chat about you've had an episode that you just didn't record. It didn't hit record on it, and it didn't go out, or you had to get everybody back in and re-record it. But I want to know what is one of, if not the worst episode that you've actually recorded and it came out so bad, but you still put it out anyway. What went wrong? Yeah. Why was it horrible? And did you actually learn anything from that?
Well, I have two answers for this. And number one was actually kind of recent. The Welsh and I did a mock draft, but we wanted to make a Mystery Science Theater 3000 kind of deal. So we put in some clips from that, but we were working with OBS, which we're not very familiar with. We're more familiar now that we do Twitch, but it had an echo on all of my audio because Welsh didn't turn something off. I don't know what it was. But he was like, oh my God, we worked so hard to put it together and everything. And it had this weird echo. He's like, do I put it up or not? I was like, I think more people will be pissed because we've been talking about it that we didn't put it up. So just put it up. It sounded weird. Wasn't great. The other one I had was when we very first started, we had a guest on, and this is when I was cutting out all of the ums. And I would cut out like 15 to 20 big ums a week. When we had this guest on, he said between every sentence. And I cut out, and I'm no S-ing you here, 148 ums. And I was like, all right, maybe we can be done, with this. I think that was maybe the last time I cut ums because I was like, 148? There's no 20. No one's going to be bothered by 20 anymore. So those were the two that came to mind when you asked about that.
Yeah. I don't have 2,000 episodes, but in the 40 some odd episodes that I put out of On the Wire, at least 2 of them simply did not turn on my mic, or my mic wasn't plugged in. So the standard mic that's on my laptop was the one that was being used. And since no one called me out on it as on our stream, it just recorded the whole way. And I'm like, all right, I've got an hour and a half, 45 minutes worth of audio. It's still going out. I'm going to do my best in post to bring this up as best as I can, but it's still pretty noticeable. But hopefully nobody holds that against me.
I did that with First Pitch. I had my Yeti up here, but for whatever reason, my computer took this little mini webcam mic. And it sounded
I did that on a TV appearance.
Even better.
It did that for me. And I was like, why didn't you guys say anything? I have this great mic in front of me, and it's using my stupid cam mic.
The other one was that I had it clipping on. I was using the RE20 for the Cubulist one with Eric Smith. It was the longest podcast I've ever done, like 2.5 hours or 3 hours. And it was clipping at the top of it. So it was horrible. And I was like, I'm the audio guy. And I just did this, and I have this lovely mic. And I sound terrible. Oh, it was so bad. But anyway, guys, it's 5:02. I gotta, I know I could do this for a very long time with both of you. Thanks so much for being on with us. Adam, do you have any closing words as the host here?
No, just I'm going to echo what you guys talked about earlier. And if you have the opportunity to support podcasts that you like, do so. Write a review. Spotify does reviews now. You can put 5 stars on there, share it. We're all kind of in this together. We all kind of want everybody's good content to go out and get listened to. So feel free to share it, whether you listen to it all the time or, once in a while you happen to like something. Let everybody else know about it.
All right. Bogman,
thank you guys
here as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is always fun, and appreciate the time. Hopefully, I know I wasn't as enthusiastic as Govier, but hopefully people still enjoyed it. So,
oh, absolutely, no, that was great. And also give my best to Welsh. I hope he's doing all right.
Doing a little better. We did a show last night, and his voice is going out like 20 minutes in.
Oh my God. And Adam Howe is the next big thing. I cannot agree more. Michael Govier.
Thank you, Michael.
But all right, guys, thank you so much for being here.
Cheers.
All right, we are moving on with PitchCon. Sorry to